Generally, companies require that the horse be in good health because there are other coverages that are available with mortality as well, and those are medical, surgical, and other extended coverages, or emergency colic, for example. Colic limit's usually $5,000, medical limit $15,000, and surgical $15,000. You actually can buy a policy that provides coverage for mortality, medical, and surgical, and liability limits are available up to $1 million if they are required.
That's right. So we can actually get approval to get those higher coverage limits. And I think in our office we've insured a horse for $650,000, but you don't always want to go for those high-valued racing horses, right?
What we find is that many of the horses we often insure are what we would consider backyard horses or low-end performance horses. When you get into high-valued horses, that you really need to know the owners, you need to know the trainers. Horses have a tendency to die when they don't perform. So higher-valued horses are more likely to have a problem. The horses that are insured at $50,000 or less are not. That's the routine risk that we see is some horse that's valued less than $50,000. Often it's a horse that's in the on the acreage that the individual lives on, and they may be into a certain discipline like dressage or reining or some other activity where the horse values are greater, but certainly not as expensive as horse racing flesh, which becomes a lot more valuable and a lot more expensive to cover.
Right. Okay, so now we're going to go over personal horse owner's liability coverage. This is coverage for bodily injury or property damage to third parties, like we spoke about in the beginning. And those are caused by the insured's personally owned horses for things like riding or shows. This liability coverage is usually going to be required by the boarding facility where the insured horses are being boarded. You probably have had, if you've dealt with equine insurance, or if you have horses yourself, you know a lot of times that you have to place it in a boarding facility. So it doesn't actually need to be on your premises for us to offer coverage. And we have a couple carriers that will write that coverage. And those are actually pretty affordable policies. We're going to count the number of horses that you own, and then you're going to be rated on, let's say you have 5 horses, you want liability limits of $1 million. You're generally looking at about $600 to $1,000 a year, and it doesn't usually go higher than that. So those are pretty affordable policies. If it ends up that you have more than 10 horses, or if you have any type of compensation for breeding training, you're going to automatically be put into a commercial equine policy. So that's one of the things that differentiates between a personal horse owner's policy and a commercial policy. It's sometimes just as basic as the number of horses. If you have that many horses, you're probably doing something a little more than just having them as lawn ornaments, as people call them. So you're going to need some better coverage for those other equine activities that you're doing. So that's one of the major differences between personal and commercial. Okay, so now we're going to move on to more information on coverage for equine activities. We talked about equine commercial general liability. So again, those activities include boarding, breeding, training, instruction. We can also cover horse sales, and that would be through all of our carriers. Generally, they don't charge for more than 5 horse sales a year, so it's just considered incidental before that. And then coverage can be extended for their equine activities, excuse me, if they're on or off the premises. because a lot of times they are traveling to shows or they're going to a client's house. So again, we want to make sure that that liability is extended to off their premises. And then there's also coverage offered for claims and defense in the policies, and that's from any negligent act, error, omission arising from your professional equestrian activities. So we also offer that professional equestrian liability coverage. For example, we do offer the coverage for a trainer, a breeder, or any other type of riding instruction. So again, it's really important to have that conversation with your insured. If they have some horses on their property, are they just using them for pleasure, or are they also using them for training, and are they going off of the premises?
So let's talk a little bit about care, custody, and control. So you've heard Michelle reference training and taking care of other people's animals. Well, let's give you an example of where this might be coverage that applies to one of your insureds. You have a individual who had a business that you insured. They've sold the business. They've always wanted to live in the country and build a big, beautiful home. They do so. They have 10 acres of land. One of the people involved in this transaction is a horse person, so they want to have a horse arena and a barn, and they build that too, and now they have a horse or two of their own that they're taking care of. But they have 5 or 6 empty stalls in the barn. And so what a good idea to perhaps board horses for other people. This is where care, custody, and control comes in. You now have a full stable. You've got 6 horses that are someone else's horses and your own. Where do they ride? How do you keep them in the fence? What if a horse breaks through the fence, ends up on the roadway, and collides with an automobile, the result of which is one dead individual in the vehicle and one that's a paraplegic? If you don't have care, custody, and control coverage in place, that individual insured is on the hook. This coverage affords legal liability for those horses that are entrusted to you by others. And all the time they're in your care, you are responsible for what liabilities those horses may present. This coverage also is applicable for medical and replacement costs of the horse up to the policy limits. And the policy limits are determined at each renewal on each and every horse or risk on a yearly basis. So if you're keeping others' animals on your premises, don't forget about care, custody, and control.
Right, very important. Huge liability there. Okay, so another thing that your insureds may be involved in, like we said, off-premises coverage is they're going to be going to horse shows and events because they probably spent a lot of time and money training their horses, and they want to take them to a show. So you want to stay ahead of the competition, and you want to make sure that you're offering that coverage. We have very competitive policies for sanctioned horse shows, and we can insure almost any equestrian event. Not every event, but almost. That's something that you want to run by your underwriter. And coverage for additional insureds is offered at no extra charge. There's also horse clinics, and a horse clinic, you might ask, what in the heck is that? It's a class for people who have several particular interests in riding. For example, you can have a show jumping clinic if several people that you're teaching want to be taught to be an expert on all things pertaining to show jumping and training methods. You might have a dressage clinic. Those are pretty intensive. And then you might get another lesson that's just a lecture. Those all can come back and have liability issues. So you're going to want to make sure that you find out how many horse shows they're going to, what type of events they're going to, and you want to get the actual number of days because that is what the carrier is going to rate based off of. Okay, we also have insurers that are participating in riding clubs and associations. So we need some liability coverage for that. We want to make a distinction here. There's riding clubs, and then there's also paid riding where you, let's say you're on vacation and you want to go ride a horse and you want to take some trail riding and you're going to pay someone to let you use their horse. That's not something that we have coverage for in California. It's getting harder and harder to find coverage for that. So that's not something that we write here. What we're talking about here are riding clubs where an organization or a group of people, they get together a couple times a year and they go riding. They might have a picnic. They might have some events going on. So we actually can insure clubs like that. And there's things that can happen, which is why that's the conversation that you want to have with them, whether it be to the club members, the participants, the property, the spectators. One of the biggest issues is that whatever property they're on, they're going to want to see a certificate of insurance for that horse riding club that's going to be riding on their land. So we can offer a certificate for that, and we can offer coverage for that. And then there's going to be those public event activities to which non-club members and the general public will be invited. We can also offer coverage for those events. Okay, so now we're going to talk about horse farm packages, and this is probably one of the things that I would say our niche is here. We do a lot of hobby farms and we do a lot of equine farms. So this is where we're going to offer a package that's similar to their homeowner's policy combined with commercial liability limits. And that's the most important piece of it, is you're going to get those higher liability limits to cover those equine operations. So the nice thing about a farm package is not only do we cover the home and the contents, but now we can cover all those outbuildings. So there's coverage for the barn, the shed, the stables, riding, the corrals, whatever outbuildings they have, we can offer coverage for those. And we can also schedule their machinery, their equipment, their tack. So those expensive saddles, they're going to want those scheduled. And then we can also offer coverage for any other livestock that they have. So if they have some cattle, which is typical on a ranch, then we're going to offer some coverage on that. We're going to throw in some animal collision in case they get out on the road. And again, we can go over the equine operations as far as the boarding, breeding, and training. Throw in the care, custody, and control, and give them one nice package that will basically cover them when their liability needs arise. And then we can also offer an umbrella to go over the top of that. And we usually see umbrella limits of between 1 million and 5 million. So we can typically offer that. And then we can also add in a commercial auto policy, and that's going to help them cover those trucks and those trailers that they're using to haul the horses, to go to the different shows. And that way we can give them the correct risk management for their equine operation.
This is probably the biggest segment that we see success in. If we have hobby farms that are 50 acres and less, have a few horses, some outbuildings, some other machinery and equipment, and other people's equipment that they're storing,
right.
This is the perfect package policy for that specific risk. And we see these throughout the state of California. It's something that we compete very competitively with.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised out. I would say they're not as expensive as you would think they are compared to a homeowner's policy. And what they're getting for it, it's well worth their while to look into getting a farm package. And also, we want to remember that it's a common misconception for homeowners that they're covered by their standard homeowners policies, because there can be a clause in there for total animal exclusions. They want to keep an eye out for that. And a lot of times there can be an exclusion for business operations. So that's a conversation that you want to have. And we're going to go over the carriers that will write those in a little bit here.
So let's just go over a couple of tips on how writing equine business can be successful. You clearly need to know all the exposures. We need to know everything about the type of policy that you're trying to write. Complete the application. There may be some supplemental information that we require, but we need to know the risk pretty well. We're going to check the website, so you need to do the same thing. Let us know what's going on with this operation. Are they renting horses? If so, that's not included and disqualifies that risk. Most aren't, but those are kinds of questions that one needs to ask. Know that for the most part, the homeowner's policy, if there are horses or cattle on premise, there will be no liability coverage for those animals. So make sure you know what's going on there. Companies do charge based on owned horses and number of boarded horses. So ask those kinds of questions too. Remember to verify those receipts for each of those categories. Do they have an outside trainer coming on premise, or are they doing the training? And if there's an independent instructor that comes, do they have their own coverage? Because those two can be purchased, and we can help you with that also. Do the policy limits match? And lastly, make certain that all of your customers have, if they're having people on their premises, that they have hold harmless and release agreements that are available.
They're going to ask for them.
We're going to ask for them. If there's boarding agreements, we need a copy of those. Post your safety rules. Let them know what it is that needs to be done. And companies will want to know how you're going to keep those animals under control. So what type of fencing do they have? Know the age of those that are getting riding lessons. Are they young? Are they old? Are they disabled? What do you have going on at that particular location? Know that operations that are longer in business with successful records will be viewed more on a preferential basis than those that are not. And remember that there is an equine supplemental form that's required and available on our website when you do write one of these packages.
All right, thank you. So undesirable. Let's see.
What won't we do? Let's talk about a few of those. Michelle mentioned them earlier. Rental operations. We won't do that. So that's the operator that's at the beach with 10 horses that you rent by the hour. We're not going to touch that. In fact, no one that we're aware of will write those kinds of operations here in California. We don't want to do pony rides or hay rides or carriage rides. Those are very different than the kind of business that we're talking about here. Wedding venues, rodeos, camps or campgrounds, guided hunts. These are all types of undesirable exposures that we would not entertain. And if you think about the categories of each of them, they have extended liability exposures that most carriers would be very, very afraid of. And as a result, do not provide coverage or pricing for those. There are specific specialty companies that will do that. We do not represent them here, nor will we do any polo matches or practices of those kinds of events that are out in the public.
And this applies particularly for California. There's different appetites depending on the state, but we're mainly focusing on what we're doing in California. All right, things that we will write, as Ron let us know earlier, our niche here is hobby farms. We will, again, do boarding, breeding, and training. We'll do horse clubs, shows. We can actually do outfitters and guides. It kind of ties into our Markel appetite. And those would be not so much guided horse rides, but we're talking about fishing, operations. We're over here in the Sacramento area, so we have some fly fishing outfitters that we insure. We can also write farriers. Those are the guys that do the horseshoeing, or gals. And then again, we can do those mortality policies for horses. We don't do mortality policies for other types of show animals, but we can write equine mortality. And then our farm carriers. So we write travelers, and that's for a package. Great American, we can do package and standalone. And we can also do non-owner operated operations for Great American. American Reliable, it's the same. We can do a package, or we can do some monoline equine. Markel, we only do monoline equine liability with them. We also do mortality with them, and we do some of those horse clubs with them. And then Liberty Mutual, we can also do a package with them. They only want a few owned horses. They won't exclude that. So we can write a whole package with Liberty Mutual as well.
Before we go to the other targeted farm classes.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk about our other farm classes that we write besides equine. So Ron's going to talk a little more about those.
So we've been talking about horse-related coverages all afternoon. What we're talking about here are some of the other agriculture-related classes that we will entertain. There are many here throughout California. All of you are likely aware of most of them, but may not be aware of the fact that we will write them here. Vineyard and orchard growers, wineries, olive oil trees, and production. Animals that are grazing, grain and rice growers, fruit and nut trees, berry growers, wholesale nurseries, hobby farms, beef farms. These are all agriculture classes that we will entertain. And those companies that we represent, that Michelle just ran down for you, all have different appetites and all like different types of classes of business. So sending your application to us, we will do our best to create the most valid quotation for you in the appetite of the carrier that likes that business more than another. So these are the kinds of things and others that we haven't listed here that we would entertain as an ag risk.
Right. So quite a bit more than just equine, but since we did go over mostly equine today, we have one last trivia question. So Matt, you want to go ahead and deliver? Yeah, it's not on the slide. So
you have to listen carefully.
We apologize for that, but here we go.
All right. So based on what you learned today, can you name 4 out of 5 equine-related products that Abram Interstate Insurance will write? Now, this one's not just for Starbucks. This is for bragging rights here. This one's tricky. 4 out of 5 equine-related products that Abram Interstate will write. Okay, I got a couple of answers coming in here.
Keep them coming. And yes, the slides are available. We will post them on the website.
Oh, that's good. All right, Sarah.
Right. Looks like Sarah came in with 4 out of 5 before anyone else did. Congratulations, Sarah.
We have another one coming in right
another
now.
one?
Wait, she got 1.
There more.
Oh, they're popping up now. One, two, three.
You got it. That's 4.
4. Oh, you guys are paying attention today. You got some really good answers here.
Are there any more answers coming in?
All right. So
Nicole
great
answered.
job, Nicole and Steve and Sarah.
Nicole, Steve, and Sarah. Good job, guys.
All right, so thank you everyone for participating. And we will be doing again Q&A right after I go over how to submit your risk. If you go to abraminterstate.com, we actually have applications available under the Forms and Applications tab. Farm and Ranch is at the very top, and you will see applications for all of the carriers that we mentioned. And if you can't decide which application or you can't get a hold of us, there's actually Ag Accords, and those are the Accords 401 through 405. And you can always send those in, or you can always send in an app that you already have completed, and we can go ahead and work with you from there. But again, we have those supplementals available on our website at abraminterstate.com. Monday through Friday, you can chat with us live between 8 and 5 p.m. And of course, you can always call us for questions, 916-780-7000. So feel free to call me with any questions you have about submissions for equine farms or any other type of farm operation.